I want to speak to you of the doctrine of biblical assurance, or as many would call it, the assurance of faith. And I fear that the great majority of Christians and professed Christians in the evangelical churches know little to nothing of the biblical teaching of assurance. And this problem has a twofold effect. On one side, you have people that are truly born again, that struggle with the fact to know that if they truly are, to know if they are honestly converted. And then on the other side, which seems to be the far greater problem, there are masses of people who are fully convinced that they are followers of Jesus Christ. And the whole of their confidence is based on vain hopes. And they wouldn't even know how to get a true hope or a true confidence that they're saved, because the subject is so little taught. I do not think that you have to have any great spiritual discernment to realize that there is a massive problem in the church, or should I say in the professed church. For I fear, as many of my like-minded brothers do, that many of these well-maintained buildings with steeples are just that, well-maintained buildings, but absolutely void of any spiritual life. I believe all of the woes that we suffer as a nation, whether moral, social, or political, they all come back to this problem of Christianity being reduced. Some call it gospel reductionism, that the gospel, is reduced to the easiest thing possible. It's the American way, is it not? To make things as easy and as simple as possible. And the gospel being reduced in this sense, and not just the gospel, but the evidence of those that are saved, has caused many to be deceived. And I would have to believe that the majority of these false converts are cemented in their deception because of the multiplicity of preachers who solidify their vain hopes with flattering words. Many we see everywhere to pad their own pockets, or some because they would be too timid in the pulpit, proving they should not be in the pulpit at all. I think Dr. Martin Lloyd-Jones put it best when he spoke those 16 homiletical lectures at Westminster Theological Seminary in 1969. And he was explaining to the preachers their duty to properly assess the listeners. And he said, and I quote, "The main danger confronting the pulpit in this matter of making an assessment of those who are in the pew is to assume that all who claim to be Christians and all who think that they are Christians and are members of the church and therefore of necessity are Christian. This to me is the most fatal blunder of all, and certainly the commonest. It is assumed that because people are members of the church, that they are Christian, and that this has been one of the cardinal errors of the church, especially in this present century. And it is this idea that mainly accounts for the state of the church today." End quote. We must understand that saving faith and assurance are two separate doctrines. The Westminster Confession would state in chapter 18, section 3, in the short sentence, it says, "Assurance doth not so belong to the essence of faith." Someone being saved and having the assurance that they are saved are separate doctrines. And what we see Peter saying here in 1 Peter, if you read specifically in verses 11 through 15, he says, "These are my dying words, and I want you to do this. And I want you to do it for the rest of your life," he says. And what does he want us to do? He wants us to make our calling and election sure. This is the means by which the believer can have a true confidence and be able to persevere in the face of much deception.